Have you ever met someone who shared so much with you right away? Like you matched with someone on a dating app, you just started messaging, and right away they're sharing a ton of really deep personal information. Like they're sharing their deepest thoughts, their deepest emotions. You're thinking, oh, this is great. This person is so emotionally available. You're sharing back and you're developing this intimate communication. And then down the road, you find out that this person actually isn't interested in a relationship. They may even tell you, they may even say, oh yeah, whoa, like, yeah, I'm not ready for a relationship. And you're just like, what? What just happened here? I thought that we were developing intimacy. I thought that all these intimate conversations were leading to a relationship. I thought that's where this was going. What happened here? So let me know, have you guys had this experience? Let me know in the comments if you've experienced this. I have had this happen to me on a couple different occasions. But I've also heard a lot of women tell me that this has happened to them, and I've read a lot of stories about this happening to women and men too. This can happen to anyone. But what tends to happen is if we are in the mindset of intimacy, someone sharing with me, someone sharing vulnerably with me equals relationship, which is what a lot of us think, and I was one of those people too, then it's very easy for us to just get pulled into a dynamic where we think that this is leading to a relationship and the other person totally not on the same page. Oversharing, what I'm calling oversharing, is sharing so much very quickly in the beginning of talking to someone. It unfortunately does not necessarily mean that this person wants a relationship. And again, like I was saying before, this can be like, what? How does this make sense? But for many people, that is the case. Oversharing does not necessarily mean that someone is emotionally available. There are exceptions, sometimes they are, but it's not like across the board. Like if someone is sharing a lot with you very openly in the beginning, it does not necessarily correlate with emotional availability. So let me talk about what could be happening here. Like what's going on if we are experiencing someone who is oversharing and they're not on the same page as us as to this means I want a relationship. They could be using you as an emotional support. Like a therapist, a lot of people, if they have some resistance to going to therapy, to talking to a coach, to talking to a counselor, to doing any sort of their own inner work, they sometimes have the tendency to use other people around them as that emotional support. I've seen this happen all the time. Men can sometimes go on, and women too, but I see this frequently with men. They tend to sometimes, when they're straight out of a breakup, they go on dating apps and they use the women there. And sometimes it's not conscious. I don't think for most of them they're consciously doing this, but they use these interactions as a way to just like vent, to get out all the stuff they've been thinking and feeling about their most recent relationship. And meanwhile, the woman on the other end is thinking, oh, this is great. Like I said, this person is being so open. This means they're really interested in me, when that's not the case for the person who's on the other end of the phone, your screen. They could purely be using you as an emotional support system. I hate that this happens, but it does. It does frequently happen. Here you go, you're talking to this person, they're being so open, and then you're developing some expectations, because for many of us, and I include myself in this, I have the idea that, hey, if I'm sharing so openly and vulnerably with someone, this is going somewhere. This is probably going to lead to a relationship. And so you start to have expectations and you bring them up and this person goes, whoa, that's not what I was thinking here. I'm just talking, we're just sharing. And that's where the disconnect can happen. And so what's going on for them is they're sharing, they're feeling really grateful. They're like, oh, this is awesome. I have somebody to talk to. I have no expectations here. I'm not in a relationship. This is great. I'm getting all these benefits of emotional intimacy from this person without the expectations. What's not to love for this person? They're sharing, they're loving this interaction. They're like, great, I have someone to talk to. And they're not necessarily assuming or even thinking that this is going to end up in a relationship. So this is a very common dynamic that happens when we're out there on the apps, and even when we're meeting people in real life. This can happen anywhere you meet somebody. What also could be happening is a little bit more sinister. This is a little bit less common, but they could be manipulating you by sharing so much in the beginning of the relationship. Some people who are more aware of what they're doing, we would call these people more sociopathic, psychopathic people. They are aware that when they share so much, when they are so vulnerable in the beginning of a relationship, they know that this can be very seductive. They know that sometimes this can be like an emotional hook. It hooks you in, pulls you into the relationship, and you feel this sense of connection and closeness. And they have no intention of being a healthy partner for you. They just want to hook you in and get you bought in, so to speak, to them and the relationship. So again, this happens more rarely, not super common, but it does happen. So it is something that you want to be on alert for. I don't want you all to walk away feeling afraid of going out there and talking to people and feel scared that every time you meet someone who's really open and vulnerable, that you have to be worried and you have to think that this is a red flag. No. What I'm going to talk about now is what to do about this, how to shift your behavior so you don't end up getting sucked into some like really extensive emotional intimacy and someone is like, oh no, I don't want a relationship, because that's never a good place to be in. So here's what you do. Here's how you can shift this dynamic and not get stuck in this trap. You can qualify first. So I am always going to tell you that if you're out there dating, one of the very first questions you want to ask people is, what are you looking for out of dating? And I sometimes get some pushback on this from people because they feel like they're going to push people away by putting that out there. They feel like sometimes they're going to ruin the vibe, they're going to ruin the mood. It's going to be like a more serious question where they're just wanting to have fun. And yeah, I hear those concerns. And at the same time, if your priority is not wasting time, if your priority is getting into a healthy relationship with someone who is available, then this is the question you want to ask in the very beginning. Doesn't have to be the first question you ask somebody, but really early on in that process, ask somebody, and you can make it kind of playful. It doesn't have to be so serious. Like you can bring it up in the context of whatever you're talking about and be like, oh yeah, like that's so awesome that you do XYZ. I'm super curious. What are you looking for out of dating? Why are you on whatever app you're on? It can be a very lighthearted question, and it can give you a ton of information. So if someone says to you, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. Yeah, maybe casual. I'm open to a serious relationship if it's the right person. And then they start divulging a ton of information about themselves and they're sharing all these deep, vulnerable things. That's your warning sign. This person has already told you, yeah, I'm not in the right place for a relationship. Maybe they didn't say that outright, but by their vagueness and not being sure of what they're looking for, that means they're not ready. And that's okay. No judgment on that. But then don't ignore whatever comes next. Like, they may be showing a lot of signs that they are available by sharing all this stuff about them, but they have very clearly told you, yeah, like I'm not interested in a relationship. So don't ignore the words of someone. And this can sometimes seem contradictory because very often I say, like when we're talking about healthy relationships, pay attention to behavior, not words. But in this case specifically, we do want to pay attention to words. Because someone who really wants to be in a relationship and someone who likes you, or at least finds you attractive and wants to pursue something and see where it goes, They're not going to risk losing you. If you've already put out there on your profile, let's say, for example, I'm interested in a relationship, they're not going to want to say anything that's going to make you be like, oh yeah, you know what, bye. We're not the right match. So if someone is saying that to you, that means they're really not serious about finding a relationship. Again, it's okay, no judgment, but if you're looking for a relationship, and if you're here watching this video, you probably are, then that's not something to ignore. Qualify first. Qualify before you go deep. If someone says, yeah, totally, I'm looking for a relationship, I'm ready for it, and then they start to share, okay, then you have somewhere to go. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to work out. That's what dating is for. You have to figure out if this is the right person for you. But at least you know you guys are on the same page. What you can also do to avoid this dynamic of getting into the place where someone is oversharing so much and you're like, oh yeah, they want a relationship, is to look for consistency before sharing too much about yourself. Because what we're trying to avoid here is that sense of like a rushed intimacy. Sometimes narcissists do this when they're love bombing you. They can give you a lot of vulnerability in the beginning and then poof, they're gone, or they're acting very abusively, and that's never good. So yeah, what we can do is look for consistency before sharing too much ourselves. So what do I mean by consistency? Do they do what they say they're going to do? If they say, hey, I'd love to do a video chat with you on Tuesday, do they show up and do it? Barring any major reasons why they can't. When they say they're going to text you, do they do that within a reasonable amount of time? If they've asked you out on a date, do they show up? Or do they cancel? Or do they flake? Or do they make up a lot of reasons why they can't do something that they've said they wanted to do? So look for the consistency here. Make sure that this person is slowly earning your trust. And then you can slowly start to share about yourself. This is, again, to avoid getting into this trap where they're oversharing and then you're jumping right on that wagon with them and you're sharing so much. And then you're left feeling in this very vulnerable place before you really know who this person is, before you know if they are someone that you can trust with your vulnerable things, the things that are most intimate for you. So again, do they keep showing up? Do they do what they say they will? When you see this, then you can slowly start to share more and more about yourself. In an ideal world, when we meet someone right away, the intimacy should build slowly. Like when we're first starting to get to know someone, we do want to keep it more surface level because we don't really know who this person is. We don't know if we can trust them with all the deepest things that we have going on within ourselves. And so we have to make sure that this person is someone that we can trust. And so we share things slowly. Because as you know, if you've been with someone narcissistic, if you have shared vulnerable things about yourself, they can take that and then use it against you down the road. Let me know if this has happened to you. This has 100% happened to me. My situation, a little bit unique because the person that I ended up dating was someone who I was working with as a client. Very messed up situation. I could do, again, like a whole video on that. But I shared a lot of stuff. I shared a lot of personal stuff. And then later on, that was used against me. So this is what we're trying to avoid here. Sharing too much in the very beginning so that we end up in a place where it's just not safe for us, or we expected a relationship and that's not what this person is looking for. What if we are the ones that do the oversharing? I have been in this place too. I have been the one to overshare. And part of that was because in the moment, I was just craving so much intimacy that I wasn't getting. That like as soon as someone paid just the slightest bit of attention to me, it was like, like I just had to share everything because it was my way of establishing a connection and trying to feel safe. So if this is you, if you're the person that's oversharing a lot in the very beginning, use that advice that I just mentioned. Try to share slowly over time, just little bits at first, and see how the relationship is going. Again, see how this person shows up. Are they kind? Are they being empathetic when you share this little bit about yourself? If they're not, then this is a sign that, oh, you know what? This is not the person who I want to be sharing my vulnerable things with. I'm going to move along here. Are they loving? Do they treat you with respect? These are all the things we want to look for before we share in greater detail about our lives. And I know that this can be hard sometimes if we're in a place where we're starved of attention, we're starved of intimacy, we're starved of connection. And so what I recommend doing is making sure you have a strong support system before you go out there dating. So make sure you're talking to a therapist, make sure you're talking to a coach, a counselor, whoever it is that works for you. Make sure you have someone to talk to that you can be vulnerable with so that it doesn't just like come out as soon as you start talking to someone when you're dating them. There's a big difference between like just sharing a surface thing, like, oh yeah, I've been divorced, versus sharing, I was divorced and this happened and my ex did this and now I'm feeling this and this. Very big difference in level of intimacy. So I hope the distinction that I'm making it makes sense here. If you're nervous about stating really clearly that you're looking for a relationship, click here. I think you'll like this video. And click here to subscribe. I come out with new trainings every Tuesday.